She stood at the entrance of the first-class cabin, wearing a grey hoodie and worn-out sneakers, looking like she belonged anywhere but seat 1A. The flight attendant, a woman named Beatrice, who wore her uniform like a suit of armor, took one look at her and laughed, blocking the aisle. "Economy is that way, honey," she sneered, pointing toward the back of the plane. The passengers snickered. The crew rolled their eyes. But what none of them knew was that the woman in the hoodie didn't just pay for a ticket. She had just signed the wire transfer to buy the entire airline. And by the time this flight lands, Beatrice's life will never be the same. The rain was hammering against the glass walls of JFK Terminal 4, blurring the lights of the tarmac into smears of neon blue and orange. Inside, the air was recycled and stale, but to Camilla Davis, it smelled like victory. Camilla adjusted the strap of her leather weekender bag, a custom-made piece from a boutique in Florence that, to the untrained eye, looked like distressed vintage luggage you might find at a thrift store. She pulled the sleeves of her oversized cashmere hoodie down over her hands. She was exhausted. It had been a 72-hour sprint of negotiations, due diligence meetings, and endless coffees with the board of Hargrove Holdings. But it was done. The deal was essentially closed. She wasn't just flying to London for a vacation. She was flying to London to meet the current CEO of Regal Atlantic Airways, Jonathan Hayes, to finalize the acquisition. Effectively, as of 9 a.m. this morning, Camilla Davis owned the plane she was about to board. But nobody knew that yet. The press release was scheduled for Monday morning. Camilla approached the gate for Regal Atlantic Flight 404. She usually flew private. Her Gulfstream was currently undergoing maintenance in Tittaboro, but she figured this was a perfect opportunity. She wanted to see the product she had just bought. She wanted to experience the legendary service Regal Atlantic boasted about in their commercials. She walked toward the priority boarding lane, eyes on her phone, checking a text from her lawyer. "Excuse me, miss. Whoa, hold on there." The voice was sharp, nasal, and dripping with condescension. Camilla stopped and looked up. Standing behind the podium at the jet bridge entrance was a flight attendant who had come up to assist the gate agents. Her name tag read Beatrice. She was immaculate. Blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, red lipstick applied with surgical precision, and a posture that suggested she was doing the world a favor by standing there. Beatrice didn't look at Camilla's face. She looked at the hoodie, then the sneakers, then the messy bun. "The boarding for Group 4 and 5 hasn't started yet," Beatrice said, her voice loud enough that the businessmen behind Camilla chuckled. "You need to wait until we call the main cabin." Camilla blinked tiredly. "I'm not in Group 4. I'm in Group 1. Beatrice let out a short, incredulous huff. She crossed her arms, blocking the scanner. "Group 1 is for first class and Diamond Medallion members only. It's for our premium clientele." She lingered on the word premium with a look that clearly said, "Not you." "I know," Camilla said calmly. She held out her phone, displaying the digital boarding pass. "Seat 1A." Beatrice snatched the phone from Camilla's hand, an invasion of personal space that made Camilla's jaw tighten, and squinted at the screen. She tapped it aggressively, as if trying to prove it was a screenshot or a fake. "Camilla Davis." Beatrice read the name like it was an insult. She looked back at the computer screen on the podium. "There must be a system glitch. We've been having upgrades go through erroneously all week." "It's not an upgrade," Camilla said, her voice steady but cooling. "I purchased the fare full price." Beatrice handed the phone back with 2 fingers, wiping her hand on her skirt afterward. "Well, aren't we lucky? Look, just because the computer put you up front doesn't mean you can block the line for the actual frequent flyers." Behind Camilla, a man in a bespoke charcoal suit cleared his throat. He checked his Rolex ostentatiously. "Is there a problem here? Some of us have meetings to get to." Beatrice's face transformed instantly. The sneer vanished, replaced by a dazzling, synthetic smile. "I am so sorry, Mr. Sterling. Just dealing with a little traffic congestion. Please come right through." She ushered the man past Camilla. He brushed against Camilla's shoulder, not bothering to apologize, muttering, "Unbelievable," under his breath. Camilla stepped forward again. "Are you going to let me board, or do I need to call a supervisor?" Beatrice's eyes narrowed. The smile dropped. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Listen to me. I don't know who you slept with or what glitch you exploited to get that seat. But this is my cabin. You might have the ticket, but you don't have the class. Don't think for a second you belong in there." She stepped aside with exaggerated slowness, sweeping her arm toward the jet bridge. "Welcome aboard," she said, the words dripping with sarcasm. Camilla walked down the jet bridge, her heart rate steady, but her mind racing. "Okay, Beatrice," she thought. "Let's see how you handle the flight." She had no idea that Beatrice was just getting started. The first-class cabin of the Regal Atlantic 777 was undeniably beautiful. Soft, ambient lighting in hues of violet and gold illuminated the 14 lie-flat suites. It was quiet, smelling of expensive leather and fresh orchids. Camilla found Zit 1A. It was the prime spot, offering maximum privacy. She tossed her bag into the overhead bin and sat down, sighing as the plush seat contoured to her back. She took out her tablet, ready to review the merger documents one last time. Other passengers began to trickle in. Mr. Sterling, the man from the gate, was in 1F across the aisle. 2 other businessmen took the seats behind her. They were already laughing loudly, discussing golf handicaps and the market. Beatrice appeared in the cabin, holding a silver tray with crystal flutes of champagne and warm towels. She moved with the grace of a dancer, weaving between the seats. "Mr. Sterling," she cooed, leaning over his pod. "So good to see you again. The usual. Champagne, hold the orange juice." "You know me too well, Beatrice," Sterling laughed, taking a glass. "Top-tier service, as always. Unlike the riff-raff at the gate, eh?" Beatrice giggled, a sound that grated on Camilla's ears. "We do our best to filter them out, sir. But you know how it is. Sometimes things slip through the cracks." They both glanced toward Sat 1A. Camilla didn't look up from her tablet, but she felt their eyes. Beatrice continued down the aisle. "Champagne, warm towel," she offered to the passengers in 2A and 2F. She served everyone. Then she reached row 1 again. She stood right in front of Camilla. Camilla looked up, waiting. Beatrice looked at Camilla, then looked at the empty tray, which clearly still had 2 full glasses of champagne on it, and then looked back at Camilla. "I need to go refill," Beatrice said curtly. "We're running low." "There are 2 glasses right there," Camilla said, pointing. "Reserved," Beatrice lied smoothly, "for the pilot and the co-pilot." "The pilots are drinking champagne before takeoff?" Camilla raised an eyebrow. Beatrice flushed slightly, realizing her mistake, but doubled down. "It's a figure of speech. These are claimed. I'll bring you a water when we're in the air. If we have extra." She turned on her heel and walked away. Camilla took a deep breath. She pulled out her phone and opened her Notes app, starting a new entry titled Flight 404, Crew Review. She typed, "Senior Flight Attendant Beatrice. Refused pre-flight beverage. Openly hostile. Disparaging comments to other passengers about customers." 10 minutes passed. Boarding was nearly complete. A younger flight attendant, a girl with dark hair and a nervous smile named Chloe, walked by checking overhead bins. "Excuse me," Camilla said gently. "Could I possibly get a bottle of water? I haven't had anything to drink since I got to the airport." Chloe smiled. "Of course, Mum. I'll grab you a sparkling or still." "Still is fine, thank you." Chloe hurried to the galley. Camilla watched through the gap in the curtains. She saw Chloe open a bottle of Evian. Then Beatrice's hand shot out, grabbing Chloe's wrist. The whisper was harsh, but sound carried in the quiet front cabin. "What are you doing?" Beatrice hissed. "Seat 1A asked for water," Chloe whispered back. "She can wait," Beatrice snapped. "We save the Evian for the paying customers. Give her a cup of tap from the lavatory if she's so thirsty." "Beatrice, she's in first class," Chloe stammered. "She's an upgrade glitch, Chloe. Look at her. She's probably a non-rev friend of a gate agent or something. Don't waste the inventory. Take that bottle to Mr. Sterling. He looks parched." Chloe looked terrified. She nodded slowly, took the bottle and walked out, past Camilla, and offered it to Mr. Sterling. Camilla felt a cold resolve settle in her stomach. This wasn't just rudeness anymore. It was systematic. Suddenly, Beatrice stormed down the aisle and stopped at Camilla's row. She looked at the overhead bin above Camilla's head. "Is that your bag?" Beatrice asked loudly. Camilla looked up. "Yes, it fits perfectly." "It's too big," Beatrice declared. "You need to gate check it." "It's a standard weekender. It's smaller than the roller bag the gentleman in 1F just put up." "The bins on the left side are smaller," Beatrice lied, "and we are running out of space. I need this bin for Mr. Sterling's coat and briefcase. You need to check that bag." "I am not checking my bag," Camilla said, her voice firm. "It contains sensitive documents and my laptop. It stays with me." Mr. Sterling leaned over the aisle. "Oh, for heaven's sake. Just check the bag, lady. Stop holding up the flight. Some of us have real work to do." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," Beatrice said, playing the victim. She looked at Camilla. "Ma'am, if you do not comply with crew instructions, that is a federal offense. I can have you removed from this plane." The cabin went silent. All eyes were on the woman in the hoodie. Camilla stood up. She was tall, nearly 5'10", and when she stood, she looked Beatrice directly in the eye. "You want to remove me?" Camilla asked quietly. "Beatrice, I want you to think very carefully about your next move. Because if you force me to check this bag, or if you threaten me one more time, you are going to regret it for the rest of your career." Beatrice laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound. "Is that a threat? Did you just threaten a crew member?" She reached for the interphone on the wall. "Captain Miller to the cabin. We have a security situation in 1A." Camilla sat back down, crossed her legs, and unlocked her phone. She didn't text her lawyer this time. She texted Jonathan Hayes, the CEO of the airline. Message: "I'm on flight 404, gate A12. We have a problem. Don't let this plane leave the gate." Beatrice smirked, looking down at Camilla. "Say goodbye to London, sweetie. Security is on the way." The silence in the first-class cabin was heavy, suffocating, and punctuated only by the low hum of the aircraft's auxiliary power unit. It was the kind of silence that screamed. Beatrice stood at the front of the aisle, arms crossed over her chest, tapping her foot in a rhythm that radiated impatience. She wasn't looking at Camilla anymore. She was performing. She caught the eye of Mr. Sterling in 1F and offered a tight, conspiratorial grimace, shaking her head as if to say, "Can you believe what we have to deal with?" Camilla sat perfectly still in seat 1A. Her hands rested on her lap, her phone screen dark. Inside, however, a storm was raging. It wasn't just anger, it was a profound, aching exhaustion. She had spent the last decade of her life fighting in boardrooms, battling for capital, and proving her intelligence to men who thought she was there to fetch coffee. She had climbed the mountain. She had bought the mountain, and yet, here, in a metal tube waiting to cross the Atlantic, she was being reduced to a stereotype by a woman who judged worth by the cut of a blazer. The cockpit door unlatched with a mechanical click. Captain Miller stepped out. He was a man in his late 50s, with silver hair and the kind of weathered face that usually instilled confidence. He wore his 4 stripes with pride, but his eyes looked tired. He adjusted his tie and scanned the scene, his gaze landing immediately on Beatrice. "What's the situation, Beatrice?" Miller asked, his voice a low rumble, designed to be heard only by the immediate rows. Beatrice straightened up, her posture shifting from aggressive to defenseless in a split second. She stepped into the captain's personal space, lowering her voice to a frantic whisper that was still perfectly audible to Camilla. "Captain, I am refusing transport to the passenger in 1A, Beatrice said, pointing a manicured finger at Camilla without looking at her. She's been belligerent since the gate. She tried to bypass the boarding process. She's been verbally abusive to me and Chloe, and when I asked her to gate-check her oversized bag for safety reasons, she threatened me." Miller frowned, his brow furrowing. "Threatened you? How?" "She said I would regret it if I made her move the bag," Beatrice lied, adding a tremble to her voice. "She said she'd make sure I lost my job. I don't feel safe working this flight with her on board, Captain. She's erratic." Captain Miller sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. He turned his eyes toward Camilla. He didn't see a business mogul. He saw a young black woman in a hoodie and sneakers, sitting in a seat that cost $10,000, looking out of place among the suits and ties. He walked over to seat 1A. He didn't crouch down to eye level, which was the standard de-escalation protocol. He stood over her, looming. "Ma'am," Miller said, his tone devoid of warmth, "I'm hearing some serious accusations from my lead flight attendant. We take the safety of our crew very seriously." Camilla looked up, her expression unreadable. "Captain Miller, is it? I haven't raised my voice once. I haven't cursed. I haven't left my seat. The only aggression here is coming from your staff." "She's lying," Beatrice interjected from the galley, her voice shrill. "Ask Mr. Sterling. Ask him what he heard." Miller turned to the man in 1F. Mr. Sterling didn't hesitate. He set down his champagne glass, the one Beatrice had provided despite claiming they were out, and adjusted his silk tie. He looked at Camilla with a mixture of pity and annoyance, the way one looks at a crying child in a movie theater. "Captain," Sterling said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "I'm a Diamond Medallion member, and I fly this route weekly. I have never seen such disrespect. The woman has been agitated since the gate. She's clearly unwell, or perhaps under the influence. She threatened the stewardess quite clearly. Frankly, she's making us all uncomfortable." Camilla felt a cold chill run down her spine. It was a perfect pile-on, the wealthy white man validating the white woman's lies, closing the circle of credibility. Against their word, Camilla was nobody. Captain Miller nodded at Sterling, accepting the testimony as fact. He turned back to Camilla, his jaw set. "Ma'am, on a vessel, the captain's authority is absolute," Miller said, "and I trust my crew. If Beatrice says you're a threat to the safety and order of this flight, then you are not flying today." "I am not a threat," Camilla said, her voice trembling slightly with suppressed rage. "I am a customer who paid full fare, and that bag contains sensitive legal documents regarding—" "I don't care what's in the bag," Miller cut her off. "And I don't care about your ticket. We can refund you. Right now, you have 2 choices. You can grab your bag and walk off this plane on your own 2 feet, and we can all get on with our evening. Or I can have the Port Authority officers, who are currently waiting at the top of the jet bridge, come in here and drag you off in handcuffs. Which would you prefer?" The cabin was dead silent. Even the air vents seemed to hold their breath. The couple in 2A and 2B were peering over their seats, eyes wide. Chloe, the junior flight attendant, was standing in the galley, biting her lip, looking like she wanted to speak but was too terrified of Beatrice to say a word. Camilla looked at Beatrice. Beatrice was smiling. It was a small, triumphant smile, the smile of a predator who has cornered its prey. She folded her arms, raising her eyebrows as if to say, "Your move." Camilla looked at the captain. He was checking his watch, clearly thinking about his departure slot and the paperwork this would cause. "I'm not getting off this plane," Camilla said softly. Miller's face hardened. "Fine. Have it your way." He reached for his radio clipped to his shoulder. "Operations, this is Flight 404. Requesting LEOs to the aircraft for passenger removal. Seat 1A, non-compliant." "Copy that, Captain. Officers are inbound." Miller turned his back on Camilla and walked toward the cockpit to grab the flight log, preparing to document the incident. Beatrice stepped forward, looming over Camilla. "I told you," Beatrice whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "You don't belong here. Maybe try the bus next time." Camilla didn't respond. She just looked down at her phone. The message she had sent to Jonathan Hayes showed red. But there was no reply. For the first time, a seed of doubt planted itself in Camilla's chest. Had the deal gone through? Was Hayes seeing this? Or was she about to be humiliated on a global scale, dragged off her own airplane in handcuffs before she even officially took control? She heard the heavy thud of boots on the jet bridge. The sound of the boots grew louder. Clomp, clomp, clomp. Beatrice was practically vibrating with excitement. She began rearranging the magazines on the center console, trying to look busy and professional, setting the stage for the police to arrive. "I'm so sorry for the delay, everyone," she announced to the cabin, her voice sugary sweet. "We just need to ensure a safe environment for our valued guests." "Quite right," Sterling grumbled. "Get on with it." Two Port Authority officers appeared at the aircraft door. They were large men, imposing in their dark uniforms, hands resting near their belts. They looked bored, clearly used to dragging drunk passengers off evening flights. "Where's the problem?" the lead officer asked, his voice booming in the small space. "Right here," Beatrice said, pointing at Camilla like she was identifying a fugitive. "Seat 1A, refusing crew instructions, trespassing." The officers stepped into the aisle. The lead officer looked at Camilla. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." Camilla's hand gripped the armrest. She took a breath to speak, to try one last time to explain, when a piercing, shrill sound cut through the tension. Brrring. Brrring. It wasn't a cell phone. It was the satellite phone inside the cockpit. Captain Miller, who had just emerged with his paperwork to hand to the police, froze. The cockpit interphone chimed immediately after, a specific, urgent triple chime that signaled a high-priority communication from the ground. This wasn't a routine check-in. Miller held up a hand to the police officers. "Hold on, 1 second." He ducked back into the cockpit. Beatrice rolled her eyes. "Probably air traffic control giving us a new slot because she made us miss ours," she said loudly, making sure Camilla heard. Inside the cockpit, Captain Miller put on his headset. He looked at the display. The call was coming from a direct line he had only seen used once in his 30-year career. Executive Operations. Priority Alpha. "Flight 404. Captain Miller speaking," he said, his voice tight. "Captain Miller." The voice on the other end was crystal clear, deep, and unmistakably furious. It was a voice Miller had heard on town hall webcasts and training videos for the last 5 years. It was Jonathan Hayes, the CEO of Regal Atlantic Airways. Miller's stomach dropped. Mr. Hayes? Sir? Captain, do not, and I repeat, do not, let that aircraft leave the gate. And if there are police officers on your plane, you tell them to stand down immediately. Miller was confused, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Sir, we have a situation with a passenger in first class, a disruptive, the passenger in seat 1A? Hayes cut him off. The CEO's voice was trembling with a mixture of rage and panic. Yes, sir. She's refusing to follow crew instructions. We are in the process of removing her now. There was a silence on the line, so profound that Miller thought the connection had dropped. Then Hayes spoke, his voice dangerously low. Miller, listen to me very carefully. The woman in seat 1A is Camilla Davis. I believe that's the name on the manifest. Yes. Camilla Davis isn't just a passenger, Captain. As of this morning, Hargrove Holdings has acquired a majority stake in Regal Atlantic. The paperwork was finalized an hour ago. Miller blinked, his brain struggling to process the information. I don't understand. Camilla Davis is the new owner of this airline, Miller, Hayes roared, the distortion crackling in the headset. She owns the plane, she owns the fuel, she owns the seat she is sitting in, and she effectively signs your paycheck. The blood drained from Captain Miller's face so fast it left him dizzy. He gripped the yoke of the plane to steady himself. She owns, Miller stammered. She texted me that your lead flight attendant is harassing her and threatening to have her arrested, Hayes continued, his voice icy. Now, I want you to go out there. I want you to apologize, and I want you to treat her with the respect you would show the President of the United States. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. And Miller? Yes, sir. Pass the phone to Miss Davis. She wants to speak to me, and keep the line open. I want to hear what happens next. Copy that. Miller took the headset off. His hands were shaking. He looked at his co-pilot, a young man named Evans, who was staring at him with wide eyes. What is it, Cap? What's going on? Evans asked. Miller didn't answer. He couldn't. He felt like he was walking to his execution. He unbuckled himself, grabbed the portable handset linked to the sat phone, and opened the cockpit door. The scene in the cabin was unchanged. The police officers were leaning in toward Camilla, one of them reaching for her arm to physically lift her. Ma'am, we're not asking again, the officer grunted. Stop! Captain Miller's scream was so loud it cracked. Everyone froze. Beatrice jumped, dropping the magazine she was holding. The police officers recoiled, hands hovering over their holsters. Mr. Sterling spilled his champagne. Miller scrambled out of the cockpit, nearly tripping over the threshold. He didn't look at the police. He didn't look at Beatrice. He looked solely at the woman in the grey hoodie. He rushed past the bewildered officers, physically pushing Beatrice aside. Excuse me, move, move! Miller panted. He stopped in front of Seat 1A. The colour had not returned to his face. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. Camilla looked up at him, her expression calm, her eyes hard as flint. She hadn't moved an inch. Miller swallowed hard. He bowed his head, a gesture of total submission. Ms. Davis, Miller stammered, his voice trembling. I have a call for you. It's Mr. Hayes. He would like to speak with you. He held out the handset with two hands, like an offering to a deity. Beatrice let out a scoff, breaking the stunned silence. Captain? What are you doing? Why are you giving the phone to the disruptor? The police are right here. Let them... Miller whipped his head around, his eyes blazing with a ferocity that made Beatrice recoil. Beatrice, be quiet! Miller snapped. Not another word out of you. Step back into the galley, now! Beatrice's mouth fell open. She looked at the police, then at Sterling, looking for an ally. but found none. She took a stumbling step back, her face flushing a deep, blotchy red. Camilla slowly reached out and took the phone from the captain. She didn't break eye contact with Beatrice as she lifted the receiver to her ear. "Hello, Jonathan," Camilla said. Her voice was smooth, cool, and carried effortlessly through the silent cabin. "Camilla," Jonathan's voice came through, tinny but audible to those standing close. "I am so sorry. I'm at the office. I'm looking at the crew roster right now. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Jonathan," Camilla said, leaning back in her seat. "Though I have to say, the legendary service we just paid $4 billion for seems to be lacking." At the words $4 billion, Mr. Sterling choked on his drink. Beatrice froze. Her eyes went wide, darting from Camilla to the phone. Her brain tried to reject what she was hearing, but the pieces were slamming together with the force of a freight train. "I'm going to fix this," Jonathan said. "Right now. Put Miller back on." "Actually," Camilla said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "Don't put Miller on. Put me on speaker. I think the crew needs to hear this, specifically the senior flight attendant. Beatrice." "Do it," Jonathan said. Camilla pressed the speaker button and held the handset up. "Go ahead, Jonathan," she said. "This is Jonathan Hayes, CEO of Regal Atlantic." The voice boomed through the cabin. "I am speaking to the crew of Flight 404. The passenger in seat 1A, Ms. Camilla Davis, is the chairman of Hargrove Holdings. As of this morning, she is the new majority owner of this airline." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum. Beatrice felt her knees give way. She reached out, grabbing the galley curtain to hold herself up. Her face had gone from red to a sickly, paste white. She looked at the hoodie. She looked at the sneakers. She looked at the woman she had tried to kick off the plane. "Ms. Davis," Jonathan's voice continued, "you have full executive authority on that aircraft. Whatever you say goes. If you want to cancel the flight, we cancel the flight. If you want to fire the staff, you fire the staff. It is your call." Camilla lowered the phone. She looked at the police officers. "Officers," she said gently, "thank you for coming. But I don't think we'll be needing you to remove a passenger. However," she turned her gaze slowly, deliberately, toward Beatrice, "we might need you to escort a former employee off the premises." The receiver clicked back into its cradle. The sound was small, mechanical, and final, yet it echoed through the first-class cabin like a gunshot. Beatrice was still gripping the galley curtain. Her knuckles were white, the blood having completely drained from her hands. Her impeccable posture, the armor she had worn so arrogantly just moments ago, had crumbled. She looked smaller, shrunken inside her navy blue uniform. The gold wings pinned to her lapel, once a symbol of her authority, now seemed to mock her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Her throat worked convulsively. She looked at Captain Miller, begging for him to intervene, to tell her this was some elaborate, practical joke, a training exercise gone wrong. Miller refused to meet her eyes. He was staring at the floor, distancing himself from the blast radius. The two police officers, realizing the seismic shift in power that had just occurred, slowly stepped away from Camilla. They hooked their thumbs back into their belts, their body language shifting from aggressive to deferential. They looked at each other, eyebrows raised, silently communicating. "We almost arrested the owner." Camilla remained seated. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply watched Beatrice with a gaze that was clinical, like a scientist examining a specimen under a microscope. I didn't know," Beatrice finally whispered. Her voice was a cracked husk of its former sharpness. Miss Davis, the manifest. It didn't have a VIP code, I swear. Camilla stood up slowly. She smoothed the front of her grey hoodie. When she spoke, her voice was low, forcing everyone in the cabin to lean in to hear. It's not about the code, Beatrice, Camilla said. And it's not about the manifest. She took a step toward the flight attendant. Beatrice flinched. If I had been wearing a Chanel suit, Camilla continued, her voice steady and relentless, would you have blocked me at the gate? If I had been white, like Mr. Sterling here, would you have assumed my boarding pass was a glitch? Beatrice stammered, sweat beginning to bead on her upper lip, ruining her perfect foundation. No, I treat everyone with, don't lie to me. Camilla cut her off gently. You saw a black woman in a hoodie. You saw messy hair. And you decided right then and there that I didn't belong in your world. You decided I was a trespasser. You didn't just fail to serve me a drink. You tried to erase me. You tried to humiliate me to make yourself feel powerful. I was just following security protocols, Beatrice pleaded, her eyes darting around the cabin, looking for support. The bag, it looked large, and with the upgrades. My bag is regulation size, Camilla said. We both know that. And as for security? You called the police on the owner of the airline because she asked for water and refused to check a carry-on. You wasted the time of these officers. You delayed this flight. You embarrassed this company. Mr. Sterling, who had been shrinking into his seat, suddenly cleared his throat. He saw the way the wind was blowing and decided to adjust his sails. I have to say, Sterling piped up, his voice booming with false indignation. I thought it was a bit harsh, calling the authorities. I mean, she was just sitting there. I told Beatrice she should just let it go, but she was insistent. Camilla turned her head slowly to look at Sterling. Her expression didn't change. She remembered exactly what he had said 5 minutes ago. She's erratic. She's making us all uncomfortable. Mr. Sterling, Camilla said coolly, we'll get to you in a minute. Sit down and be quiet. Sterling's mouth snapped shut. He sank back into his leather pod, his face turning a shade of crimson that matched the tomato juice he hadn't ordered. Camilla turned back to Beatrice. The flight attendant was shaking now. Tears were welling up in her eyes, threatening to spill over her mascara. Miss Davis, please, Beatrice whimpered. I have been with Regal Atlantic for 15 years. I have a mortgage. My daughter is in college. I can't lose this job. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I'll get you anything you want. Champagne, caviar. I'll make sure you have the best flight of your life. It was a pathetic display. The bully, stripped of her power, was nothing but a coward. Camilla looked at her, and for a split second, there was a flicker of pity in her eyes. But then she remembered the way Beatrice had looked at her at the gate, the sneer, the contempt. She remembered the way Beatrice had lied about the water. This wasn't just about Camilla. It was about every person who had ever been looked down upon, dismissed, or mistreated by someone like Beatrice. It was about the culture of the company Camilla had just bought. You're right, Beatrice, Camilla said softly. You have been here for 15 years, which means this isn't a mistake. This is who you are. And I cannot build a new airline with people who think like you. Camilla turned to Captain Miller. Captain, she said. Yes, Miss Davis? Miller snapped to attention. I am officially invoking the CEO's authority, Camilla said. Beatrice is relieved of duty, effective immediately. Beatrice let out a sob, covering her mouth with her hand. I want her off this plane, Camilla said. She does not fly with us to London. Not as crew, not as a passenger. Miller nodded solemnly. Understood. He turned to the police officers. Officers, I apologize for the confusion earlier. The disruptive individual in Seat 1A is actually the airline owner. However, we now have a crew member who has been terminated and needs to be escorted off the aircraft to the terminal. The lead officer grinned. He had seen this kind of poetic justice only in movies. He stepped forward, pulling a pair of zip ties from his belt, though he didn't use them. "Mum," the officer said to Beatrice, "let's go. Grab your bags." The cabin was silent, but the energy had shifted. It was no longer the tense silence of impending violence. It was the stunned, electric silence of a public execution. Beatrice moved like a zombie. She walked to the small closet at the front of the cabin where the crew stowed their luggage. Her hands trembled so violently she couldn't unzip the compartment at first. She had to use 2 hands to pull her roller bag out. The wheels clattered loudly on the floor, a harsh, ungraceful sound in the plush cabin. She turned around. The aisle to the exit was blocked by Camilla. Beatrice looked up. Her face was ruined. The mask was gone. She looked old, tired, and defeated. "Miss Davis," she whispered one last time. Camilla stepped aside, clearing the path. "Goodbye, Beatrice." Beatrice lowered her head. She began the long walk. It was only 20 feet to the aircraft door, but it must have felt like miles. She had to walk past the passengers she had performed for earlier. She walked past Mr. Sterling in 1F. He looked out the window, pretending to be fascinated by the rain on the tarmac, refusing to acknowledge her existence. She walked past the couple in row 2. They watched her with wide, unblinking eyes. She walked past Chloe, the young flight attendant she had bullied earlier. Chloe was standing by the galley wall, hugging a manifest to her chest. Beatrice paused for a microsecond, looking at Chloe, perhaps expecting sympathy. Chloe straightened her back. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. She watched Beatrice leave with a look of quiet relief. The police officers flanked Beatrice, one in front, one behind, escorting her off the jet bridge like a common criminal. The heavy aircraft door thudded shut behind them, sealing the cabin from the toxicity that had just left. Captain Miller let out a long breath. He wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked terrified. He knew he was the captain, technically in charge, but he had also been ready to kick the owner off the plane. He was wondering if he was next. "Captain Miller," Camilla said. Miller jumped. "Yes. Yes, Miss Davis." "We are now down a flight attendant," Camilla noted. "Can we still fly legally?" "Yes, ma'am," Miller said quickly. "On the 777, for this passenger load, we have enough crew. We can operate with 1 less. It just means, well, the service in first class might be a bit slower." "That's fine," Camilla said. "I'm sure Chloe can handle it." "Right, Chloe?" Chloe's head snapped up. "Me?" "Yes, you," Camilla smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had shown since entering the plane. "You tried to give me water. You wanted to help. I saw that." Chloe blushed, clutching her tray. Thank you, Miss Davis." "You are now the lead flight attendant for the first-class cabin," Camilla announced. "Don't let me down." "I won't, I promise," Chloe beamed. "Good. Now, Captain, let's get this plane in the air. I have a meeting in London tomorrow, and we are already 20 minutes late." "Right away, Miss Davis." Miller practically sprinted back to the cockpit. Camilla sat back down in seat 1A. She exhaled, the adrenaline fading, leaving her tired. She watched the crew scramble. The dynamic had completely flipped. The remaining flight attendants were moving with terrified efficiency, double-checking everything, smoothing wrinkles that didn't exist. She felt a tap on her armrest. She turned. It was Mr. Sterling. He was leaning across the aisle, a charming, oily smile plastered on his face. He held up his glass. "Miss Davis," he said, his voice dripping with sycophancy. "I just wanted to formally introduce myself. Richard Sterling. I run a hedge fund in Canary Wharf. I have to say, that was masterful. Truly. That woman was a nightmare. I'm glad you handled it. We need strong leadership like that in the airline industry. He paused, waiting for her to validate him. I'd love to buy you a drink once we're airborne. Discuss business. I'm actually looking to diversify my portfolio, and Hargrove Holdings is quite the titan. Camilla looked at him. She looked at his expensive suit, his Rolex, and the desperate look in his eyes. He was the same man who had called her unwell and urged the police to arrest her. He was worse than Beatrice in a way. Beatrice was a gatekeeper. Sterling was an opportunist who would step on anyone's neck to stay comfortable. Camilla picked up her phone. She didn't look at him. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice bored. "Yes." He leaned in closer. "Your bag," she said. My bag?" He looked up at the overhead bin. "It looks a little big," Camilla said. "And the bin is quite full. I think for safety reasons we need to gate check it." Sterling blinked. But the bins are empty. Beatrice took her bag. There's plenty of space." Camilla turned to look at him, her eyes cold. "It's a new policy, executive decision. Oversized egos and oversized bags go in the cargo hold. Chloe?" Chloe appeared instantly. "Yes, Ms. Davis?" "Mr. Sterling's bag needs to be checked. He feels it's unsafe in the cabin." Chloe suppressed a smile. "Of course, I'll tag it right now." "But my laptop, my medication," Sterling sputtered, his face turning purple. "You can keep your medication," Camilla said, putting her headphones on. "But the bag goes, or you can join Beatrice on the tarmac. Your choice." Sterling sat there, mouth agape, realizing he had played the game and lost spectacularly. He watched helplessly as Chloe took his pristine leather bag from the bin and walked it toward the door to hand it off to the ramp agent. Camilla closed her eyes. The plane began to push back from the gate. The engines roared to life, a deep, powerful hum that vibrated through the floor. She was finally going to London, and she had a lot of work to do. The flight across the Atlantic was smooth, but the atmosphere inside the cabin remained thick with an unspoken tension. While the other passengers in first class slept, or pretended to sleep, Camilla kept her overhead light on. She didn't recline her seat into a bed. She didn't watch a movie. She worked. For 7 hours she typed furiously on her laptop, drafting a memo that would land in the inbox of every Regal Atlantic employee by 9 a.m. London time. It wasn't just a restructuring of assets. It was a restructuring of the soul of the company. She outlined new protocols for customer interaction, mandatory bias training, and a zero-tolerance policy for the kind of elitist gatekeeping Beatrice had displayed. Chloe, the young flight attendant, was the only one allowed in Camilla's orbit. She moved with a nervous diligence, anticipating Camilla's needs before they were voiced. A fresh bottle of water appeared the moment the previous one was empty. A hot towel was offered to refresh her hands. Around 3 a.m., somewhere over the dark expanse of the ocean, Camilla closed her laptop. She rubbed her temples, the adrenaline finally giving way to bone-deep fatigue. "Ms. Davis?" Chloe's voice was a whisper. She was kneeling by the aisle, balancing a tray with a porcelain teapot and a single cup. "I made you some chamomile. I thought it might help you rest before we land." Camilla looked at the tea, then at the young woman. Chloe's eyes were kind, devoid of the sycophancy that dripped from Mr. Sterling across the aisle. "Thank you, Chloe," Camilla said, taking the cup. "You've done an excellent job tonight. It hasn't been easy. I wanted to apologize again," Chloe stammered quietly. "For earlier. I should have stood up to Beatrice sooner. I knew she was wrong, but I was scared. She was my senior." Camilla took a sip of the tea. It was hot and soothing. "Fear is a powerful silencer, Chloe. But leadership isn't about not being scared. It's about what you do when you are scared. You tried to help me when it cost you. That matters. Camilla reached into her bag, the bag that had started the entire conflict, and pulled out a business card. It was heavy, embossed cardstock. "I'm appointing a new head of customer experience for the fleet," Camilla said, handing the card to Chloe. "It's a corporate role, based in London. No more pushing carts, no more bullying seniors. You'd be helping me rewrite the training manuals. I think you know exactly what needs to change." Chloe stared at the card, her hands shaking slightly. "Ms. Davis, are you serious?" "I don't joke about business," Camilla smiled tiredly. "Think about it. Let me know when we land." The descent into Heathrow was grey and misty. As the wheels touched down on the tarmac, a scattered applause broke out in the main cabin, a tourist tradition. But in first class, there was only silence. Mr. Sterling had spent the entire flight staring at the back of the seat in front of him, stripped of his luggage and his dignity. The plane taxied not to a regular gate, but to a remote stand. As the engines whined down, Camilla looked out the window. A fleet of black Range Rovers was waiting on the tarmac, flanked by airline staff in high-visibility vests. Captain Miller's voice crackled over the intercom, sounding humble and eager to please. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London. We ask that everyone remain seated, while we escort a priority passenger off the aircraft first." Camilla stood up. She grabbed her weekender bag. She didn't look back at Mr. Sterling. She didn't look back at the empty seat where Beatrice used to rule. She nodded to Chloe, walked to the aircraft door, and stepped out into the cool English morning air. At the bottom of the stairs stood Jonathan Hayes, the CEO. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. He was pale, his tie slightly askew. "Camilla?" he said, stepping forward, extending a hand that was slightly damp. I don't even know where to begin." Camilla adjusted her bag on her shoulder. She looked at the luxury cars, the frantic executives, and the massive Regal Atlantic jet looming behind her. "You can begin," Camilla said, her voice crisp and clear over the wind, "by explaining to your board why their new chairman had to fire a staff member before the ink on the contract was even dry." Jonathan winced. "It's being handled. HR is processing the termination paperwork as we speak. We are issuing a formal apology." "Save the apology, Jonathan," Camilla said, walking past him toward the lead car. "Apologies are cheap. Change is expensive. And lucky for you, I have deep pockets." She stopped at the open door of the Range Rover and turned back. She saw Chloe standing at the top of the aircraft stairs, watching her leave. Camilla gave her a small wave. Jonathan scrambled to catch up. "Where are we going? The office? The hotel?" Camilla got into the car, settling into the leather seat. She looked out at the airport, at the empire she had just conquered. "The office," Camilla said. "We have a staff meeting. And tell the board to get comfortable. It's going to be a long day." The door slammed shut. The convoy moved out, leaving the plane behind. Camilla Davis had arrived, and Regal Atlantic Airways would never be the same again. Camilla Davis didn't just buy an airline that day. She bought a lesson for everyone on board. Beatrice learned that power isn't about a uniform or a title. It's about character. Mr. Sterling learned that status is fragile, and that money doesn't buy class. And the world learned that you should never judge someone by their hoodie, their sneakers, or the color of their skin. You never know who you're talking to. The person you mock today might be the one signing your paycheck tomorrow. In a world obsessed with appearances, Camilla proved that true worth is often hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. What a ride, right? It's satisfying to see justice served so swiftly, But it's also a reminder of the real prejudices people face every single day. I want to hear from you. Have you ever been judged by your appearance in a store, a restaurant, or on a plane? How did you handle it? Did you have a Camilla moment? Let me know your story in the comments down below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more dramatic tales of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching. Stay kind, stay humble, and I'll see you in the next video.